Hello, my name is Rusty Coones, and I have Art Eguia with me, the founder of Indian Bike Week. How you doing, Art?
I'm doing good, Rusty. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
I'm glad to have you, man. I've been trying to get with you for a while, man. I've been out there a few times to your events, and it's really such a cool thing because you've got like a large extended family of people that support everything you do. And I'm really impressed by that. And you're the only guy that's doing, these record-breaking packs for Indian that's bigger than anybody else in the world. And it seems like every year it grows. I mean, you've got people coming from around the world, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, all over the place. I think, was there somebody there from Russia or something?
There was a gal there that came last year from Ukraine while all the Ukraine stuff was happening, and I also had a buddy of mine. His name was Chris that showed up from Australia, and another friend that came from the UK. All of them had been trying to. Well, I know that Chris, the guy from Australia, and my other buddy from the UK, Stuart, had been trying to get to Indian Bike Week for quite some time, but COVID had hit, so you know how that went. Everything was pretty much closed down and stuff like that. But they were able to make it in 2022. Chris unfortunately had a small accident, and but he punched right through it, and he's going to be back this year.
Now, that was the guy from Australia, right?
Yeah, Chris was the guy from
Oh, you,
Australia, and
yeah.
right before the event started, he had gone into a motorcycle accident.
Yeah. I mean, you brought us in there in the evening. And so we go to hang out where everybody was kind of, having a beer and he's standing there. He's got like a full, like some kind of a cast thing going on with, he's all wired up and everything. And it was hilarious. Most people in his condition, they would have still been in the hospital or they would have went home or stayed laid up somewhere. And he was there the whole damn time. It was hilarious.
Yeah, he was determined to be part of the event regardless. He was walking around with a cane, a neck brace. He was in pain, man, but he wanted to be there and he wasn't going to miss it for the world, and he got better. One thing about Chris is he was actually in the Australian military, and so he came from a pretty tough background. That dude is tough. I'll tell you, he for what he went through and to show up with a cracked spinal cord and everything and be there for the event, he
Yeah.
was
He
he
didn't
was
miss a beat, man. He was everywhere.
no,
It was
he
it
was
was
there, and
hilarious.
he still enjoyed the event. He just didn't enjoy it the way he wanted to, but he'll do it this year.
Right on, man. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that guy. He was funny. So anyhow, before we get into all the details of your event and how it started, let's go back into your childhood when you first started riding motorcycles. What age were you at that time, and what kind of motorcycle did you start with?
Well, the first motorcycle that I ever rode was a uh, was a Suzuki dirt bike. It was like a 500 cc or less, oversized for me, but I was determined to get on that bike and give it all hell. And I lived kind of in a town called Forest Lake at the time, and it back in 1992. Um, there were not a lot of houses out there, so there was a lot of terrain to just kind of basically mull over.
So that was your first experience on motorcycles with the Suzuki dirt bike. What was your next step up in motorcycling after that?
Well, in 2000, actually in 2001, I had heard of this brand called Ridley motorcycles, and they were these new automatic motorcycles that were kind of catching the motorcycle industry by storm. They were automatic. They sounded louder than a stock Harley. I mean, they had some loud pipes, but they were running straight pipes, but they sounded great. And Ridley motorcycles came on the scene, I believe, in like 1999 or 2000. And I had finally found a motorcycle that was not oversized. As a matter of fact, it was like a little bike, and I was slightly oversized for the bike, but I thought it was just the coolest little cruiser. And I found out that they were American made. The company was in Oklahoma City. It was a father and son team. It was a Jay and Clay Ridley. Um, they were definitely entrepreneurs, and my adoptive mother and I had bought these two bikes, and we were just going to go out cruising around together, right? And one day I just inquired about, hey, where do they sell them? Well, they happen to sell them 4 hours away here in Minnesota. And so then I had talked to my adoptive mother, and I said, why don't we start this? Why don't we start a dealership? So in October 12th of 2002, I opened up my first motorcycle dealership with Ridley Motorcycles. We literally started out with 4 motorcycles on the floor. They were all 3/4 size motorcycles. And then about 2 years later, they started producing the full size. The smaller ones were 500 and 570 cc. Then they got into the full size market of cruisers, and those are 700 and 750 cc. But because they were automatic right out of the hole, you give those suckers gas, and they were up to like 60 miles per hour in about 3 seconds. So they were a good line of motorcycles for what they were. But then they got a little spendy later on, and I think that's part of the demise of that company. But it was great selling them while we had them.
Right on. Right on. And then after that, what was the next step? Was that when you got into Indian?
Well, after that, it was literally almost pretty much 3 years to the day that we opened. We moved into a bigger facility, which was, my first facility was only 800 square feet, but the second one was 5,600 square feet. We got into Precision Cycle Works, Q-Link. We started selling Royal Enfields, Titan motorcycles. And then we started taking in used Indians. And at that time, I was kind of doing some market research to see what real OEM big brand we could get into. And just around that time, I had seen a video. This is back when all the custom bikes was huge. Everybody was getting on Discovery Channel, all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right around 2000 to 2005, the big wave of custom bikes. Orange County Choppers was big. Arlen Ness was big. All these bike builders were getting big. Unknowns were becoming famous. And so, but I kind of had my eyes set on an OEM brand that I thought would be good for the community. And they had just gone out of business in 2002 or 2003. So it was right around 2005 that I started looking into something. At first, I was looking at Kawasaki, but their numbers weren't great. And they were kind of flooding the market with too many dealers. So dealers were kind of fighting with each other. And then I found out that this group called Stelican Group had bought out the name Indian Motorcycle. Right away, sent them an email, and they actually responded within a day. They're like, yeah, we're going to restart up Indian Motorcycle and everything. So, stay tuned. Well, 2 years later, we finally make the trek out to Kings Mountain, North Carolina, where Stelican Group, which brought back a line like Chris Craft Boats. They had bought out Chris Craft, and then they brought it back up and they sold it to a bigger company. And then they bought Indian and did the same thing with Indian. So in 2008, they opened up the Indian Motorcycle franchise again, and we were the first dealership to get interviewed and accepted, but we were number 13 to open in 2009. The first one opened up in Kings Mountain, North Carolina, in Lowell. That one belonged to a guy named Mark Moses. And then from there, all the dealerships started opening. The only reason why we opened late was because we were kind of looking for the perfect facility. And it just so happened that the St. Paul Harley Davidson dealership was right next door to us in St. Paul. So we positioned ourselves strategically right in front of a freeway, right next door to the Midwest largest Harley Davidson dealership. And so in 2008, we moved out of the facility that we had bought in 2005, 3 years later, and we opened up Indian Motorcycles under the Kings Mountain regime. And then right after that, Polaris bought them out 3 years later. So then we waited 2 years for them to produce a motorcycle, and then it took off like gangbusters. and that was kind of like my motorcycle dealership story.
Right on. So what was the year that you first started the Indian pack rides and the event?
Well, we actually started um, we started an event called the Indians Only Ride. And I
Mhm.
believe that started in 2011 or 2012. So we had been doing this but I had been doing like charity rides and stuff like that since I had the Ridleys in 2002. So when I, started reaching out to people and bringing in the people that had already owned Indians from the Gilroy era from 99 to 2003, they all started coming on these rides that I would put together. So we would put together an event called the Indians Only Ride once a year. And then it wasn't until 2016 that we started calling the Indians Only Ride. We turned it into Indian Bike Week.
Okay. I think I was there in 16 or 17.
I was trying to figure that out the other day, and I think the
Yeah.
very first time, well, like people like Danny Trejo came out in 2012,
Mhm.
but I think you came out in 2016. Yeah, you came out the first year that we did.
And Danny
Uh,
was there when I came out.
yeah, Danny was there, and then you did not come out in 2017,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you were definitely there the first time. And at that time, we did a Guinness World Record ride, and we set a Guinness World Record for the largest parade of Indian motorcycles in the history of Indian motorcycles. And then in 2017, we set the new record, and we beat the old record. We beat our own record, and did a second run at the 2017 Guinness World Record event for the largest parade of Indian motorcycles.
Good.
So,
So after that, when was the next Indian Bike Week?
so I restarted Indian Bike Week in 2020. So I did the first one. Just a few people showed up, but they still came in from kind of far away. And then, just in the state. I'm sorry, in the country, not out of the country.
Mhm.
And so I started Indian Bike Week in 2020. I started working towards Indian Bike Week 2021 when all of this stuff happened to me.
Mhm.
So the house burned up, and then was Indian Bike Week. And right after Indian Bike Week, I got hit by the car, you know? And, but right when Indian Bike Week happened, we had such a good showing. We had over 200 and some bikes, and about just under 300 registrations. Um, then I thought we can do this. And while we were at Indian Bike Week, I noticed that there were a lot of women that had shown up solo. So I thought, maybe we can promote this in 2022 and do a world record for just women. And um, and so I started promoting it, and a lot of women signed up. And in 2022, we set another world record. It wasn't through Guinness, but we set another world record um, with a different company, and we created the first ever longest parade of female Indian motorcycle riders in 2022. Everything happened in a way that I feel like it was supposed to. And it
Yeah.
just so happened that in 2022, when we set that world record, the song that I heard back in 2019 is in the documentary of the world record event. And that's why I say I manifested that.
Right on. Now you talked about the bike accident or the car accident. What about bike accidents? Have you ever had a bike accident?
I haven't had any like personal motorcycle accidents other than my dirt bike. The time that I did have a motorcycle accident on my dirt bike, the bike actually fell on top of my ankle, so luckily it didn't break. I was just never a guy to wear a helmet. I was lucky that when I had that accident, that it wasn't a head injury or anything, because I was out in the middle of nowhere and I was trying to go up this real steep hill with this bike. But I haven't had any motorcycle accidents with the big bikes. I've never laid one down like on a highway, on a freeway, on a back street, or anything like that.
Mhm.
But I'll tell you, man, that time that I had that accident with the dirt bike, it was kind of scary. There was nobody around. I had to like pull my leg out from underneath that motorcycle, wait about an hour till I could kickstart that sucker again, and then get on that bike and go home. So
Yeah. Hey, so when you do the Indian ride, I know you have a lot of celebrities come and go, over the years. Do you have any funny stories about some of the people that have showed up for the bike week and some of the riding incidents or any other things?
I'll tell you who has come out. First person that ever came out was Danny Trejo. And also a friend of mine who's not a celebrity, but is the son of Burt Monroe. Did you ever see the movie The World's Fastest Indian with Anthony
Yeah.
Hopkins?
Oh, great movie. Yeah.
Yeah, his son, John Monroe, came out to our event the same year that Danny came out to our event.
Hmm.
And so Danny came out the first time by himself. And the second time he came with John Monroe. And John Monroe is the son of Burt Monroe from The World's Fastest Indian. So he came from New Zealand. And it was really cool having those guys here. The second year that Danny came out, we were out riding, and we were out riding in Wisconsin, and Danny was riding on the inside lane, and I was on the outside lane, and or on the outside of the lane, I should say. Sorry. And then I remember Danny wanted to get up in front. He wanted to feel like he was leading the pack, and I was just like, "Go ahead, man." Danny was literally this far from the where the pavement ended, and the dirt buddied right up next to the pavement, and there was about that much height between the pavement and the sand. And
Uh,
so I'm like watching Danny in front of me ride. He's riding that line for like 5 minutes. I couldn't believe he rode that line, man. There's no way I could have kept it straight on there, but I thought to myself, man, this is all I need. I was like, I can't imagine Danny just like slipping right off of that ledge and then
yeah.
going off into the woods. But he didn't. He held it, man. It was
Yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah.
I remember we rode in that pack, and Danny was up front, and we had to make a right turn going back to your dealership that one time around 16. And I think he
Yeah.
went straight into the weeds or something.
He he slowed down. He did go into the weeds, but he slowed down, and the thankfully the bike did not go over.
Right.
But he was
Yeah.
I think he was really excited, and he was riding an Indian Scout.
Yeah. I
And
remember that.
yeah, and he told me when he got off the bike, this bike is a Ferrari. He says, I could not get used to how much, when he cracked that throttle, how fast the bike would take off. And they're super
Yeah.
quick
They're
bikes.
peppy. Yeah.
Yeah, super peppy. I mean, you got a 1200 cc bike that will outperform the 114 Harley Davidson at go. You know what
Yeah.
I
And
mean?
it's way lighter, lower, it fit
Yeah.
him pretty good.
Yeah, it did. But luckily he didn't get hurt. And then I remember just thinking, what's he doing? you know,
Well, right on, man. I think we're going to close it out pretty quick. Do you have anything else you want to add to the interview before we end?
the event itself, it's a great event for people that are true enthusiasts. I still get the guys that are on Indian motorcycles and they're like, well, nothing compares to Sturgis. Well, that's fine. Sturgis is Sturgis, and Sturgis will always be Sturgis. And Sturgis will be Sturgis year after year after year after year.
Mhm.
It's the same thing pretty much for the past, 30, 40 years before all these regulations got taken off the event and all that kind of stuff, all these restrictions. But you know, Indian Bike Week is a completely different kind of event. This is an event for hardcore enthusiasts that don't feel like they need to be in Sturgis to feel like they're at a rally, because you can see 100 Indians, 1,000 Indians in Sturgis. But when you come to Indian Bike Week, you're with hundreds of bikes at Indian Bike Week. You're not just seeing them off in the distance, meeting the people. You might go to one of the, you might go to like, Buffalo Chip and see, I don't know, 10 Indians in the lineup in a sea of Harleys, right? But you don't know who's there. right? You don't know who's there. Somebody might be getting on a bike and maybe they talk to them for a brief moment. But Indian Bike Week has turned into such a camaraderie event that people look forward to it because they feel like you're going to an event that brings in family. And you become really good friends with a lot of the people that are there. And you get to meet people that you've been talking to, say like on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. You get to meet all these people at the event that you've been talking to for a year. And when the event's over, you want to just, you're counting down the days to the next event because you had such a euphoric, great time feeling that you want to duplicate that, right? And we don't try to keep Indian Bike Week the same every year. We try to change up the rides, the locations, everything, so it doesn't become stagnant. It doesn't become stale. You know, we're doing something different again this year, moving stuff around, different places. So, like for instance, the people that came earlier would go to different places than the people that came later. So this year we're flipping it, right? So that the people that came earlier last year get to see the stuff the whole week, and the people that came late last year get to see the stuff that people saw earlier last year. And so every year is a little bit of a different challenge to make it a little bit different. You just want to make it a little bit different every year. And so, back to what I was saying earlier about I got into a different business. I recently started getting into sober housing, and Danny's been sober for I think 40 years now, maybe 50. I think if I remember, you are too, right?
I've never had a problem with it, but I'll go a year without having a beer.
Oh, okay.
Every once in a
Sure.
while, I might have one or
Okay.
two, but
Sure.
I can take it or leave it.
Yeah, and Emilio has also been sober for quite a
Mhm.
while, and Joseph Lucero, who I met last year from Mayans MC, he's been sober. And so, one of the things that I will, I wanted to say this to you, uh, and I think I might have brought it up before, but I kind of eavesdropped on a conversation you were having last year on the phone with somebody that was having a tough time,
Mhm.
Rusty. And I remember I was going to come up to you and talk to you, but I saw you were on the phone, so I kind of stayed back, just kind of waiting for you to finish up the call. But I had realized that you were really trying to help this guy on the phone, and you were saying such positive words to him. It made me like I had such an admiration for you for doing what you did to that guy on the phone. The guy was obviously distressed, and you were just trying to be a very positive force with him, and I think you achieved it. And I didn't bring it up to you for a little while, but I just wanted to tell you that I had never heard somebody give such good words of positive encouragement to somebody going through distress at that very moment. And I thought that that was just a really cool thing that you did, and I just wanted to, commend you for that. I never would have thought that, a guy from, that was, involved with clubs and guy with a tough guy persona on the TV. It just tells you a lot that, that we're all just people, right? And some of us get a little luckier than others in life and stuff like that, to get on the big screen or on the little screen. And that's awesome that you do that. But that day caught me off guard about you, Rusty. And I thought that was really cool that you had such positive things to say to this guy to just, bring him down, to bring him back up, to lift him up. I thought that was really cool that you did that. And I'm very happy that you're my friend now, and that you want to be part of this event. I think it's cool that you just want to see this grow. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Yeah, I do that. And the other thing is, I'm really down with people that have had problems with addiction, whether it be alcohol or drugs. And I'll do anything I can to help anybody that's willing. Of course, we know that if they're not ready, they're not ready. But if we can even talk to them a little bit and plant a seed, and that tree might not grow right now, but that seed might grow a year from now. They're going to remember what you said at some point, and hopefully it'll take root and help them turn their life around. And I'm all about anybody that's in distress like that I know. I always try to help them. And I've been in the business a little bit over the years, as you are. And, same thing with you. I see you running the sober houses and all the work you're doing with addicts, and you sit in on the meetings and take an active part in it, which is really cool. A lot of the owners don't get involved like that with the groups at their homes, where people are trying to be sober and learn things, and you're right in the middle of it. You really take it serious. And that's something we'll always have in common there too. So we got the bikes, and I love Indian Bike Week. You've got a really cool, loyal following of people that's building. Every year you're breaking records. I'm looking forward to the next one, and I'll be there to see it and participate.